back to another edition of Bracket Science. As always, we thank you for tuning in. It is Sunday, December 10th, and we are here to recap a huge day of college basketball that took place yesterday. The college football regular season is now done for the year, and you know what that means. College basketball now owns Saturdays, and we had a great start to this season yesterday. We saw 5 unbeaten teams suffer their first loss, along with many other huge matchups around the NCAA. There were also some key mid-major matchups that flew under the radar. These are some games to watch out for come Cinderella story season in March. As always, we updated our hierarchy of hoops, making quite a few changes to our top 32 teams in the country. And we also updated our future best bets for the national champion. We have a new number 1 team. I think you know who that might be. Finally, we will preview a rather slow week of college basketball, leading up to a huge weekend of college basketball. Let's get right into it. Thanks again for tuning in. Let's start with the first game of the day, which started at 12 o'clock, and it was a top 20 matchup where number 20 Illinois visited number 17 Tennessee in Knoxville. Tennessee favored by 7 and won by 7, 86-79, a great line there by Vegas. This was an incredibly physical game where Illinois actually led at the half 36-34, but Tennessee's defense just strictly humbled Terrence Shannon and Marcus Domask in the second half. Terrence Shannon of Illinois still did have 22 points. They were mostly free throws coming down the stretch. He was great from the free throw line, but was only 5 for 16 from the field. And Tennessee held Marcus Domask, who had 33 points, may I remind you, against Florida Atlantic the other night. They held Marcus Domask to only 6 points on 2 of 11 shooting and 0 for 5 from 3. This Tennessee defense looked great. They're athletic. They are frustrating for the opponent. But their offense also looked great. All 5 Tennessee starters were in double figures. They were led by Dalton Knecht again, who had 21 points. He just keeps looking better and better. He has that effortless athleticism. He can jump out of the gym. He's making plays that other players cannot make. He still needs a little bit of work on the defensive end, but this Tennessee defense is so good that they can pick up for Dalton Knecht. Tennessee was also great from the free throw line coming down the stretch. They held off a late Illinois run by making their free throws. That's what a disciplined team does. That's what Rick Barnes preaches. Coming off 63% shooting against Florida Atlantic, Tennessee held Illinois to only 35% shooting in this game and 25% from 3. Marcus Domask, once again, 0 for 5 from 3, did not help that percentage. Tennessee's lineup seems to be really coming together, starting with Dalton Knecht. As good as he is a star to watch out for come March Madness season. Ziegler is getting nothing but healthier, and Vescovi looks like his old self. 2 years ago, he was all SEC Player of the Year, or all SEC First Team, and now he's not even their number 1 option for this Tennessee team. Their guard play is very big and very fast. They may lack a big man a little bit. They got Adu down low. I question whether they can put up with a Kansas team, as we saw them get beat by Kansas. They got beat by Purdue. I think they need a little bit more aggressiveness down low. We'll see how they do come March Madness season. Their guard play can carry them very far. They now have wins versus Illinois and Wisconsin, who seems to match up to their style, both very good guard teams. Tennessee may have some of the best guards in the nation, size-wise. Tennessee was able to play small against Illinois and Wisconsin. They could play small and frustrate these teams. But when they played the bigger teams, such as Kansas, Purdue, and even North Carolina, they lost. And they lost, I think, a lot because of their size, because their big man is the weakness of this team. Hopefully Rick Barnes can get someone else in there. Maybe Adu, get him going a little bit more, get him a little more aggressive. But anyways, Tennessee looks great. They move to 6-3 on the year and pick up a well-needed win against Illinois. Next game to talk about kind of flew under the radar because of this Tennessee game. And this Tennessee game took a while. There were a lot of fouls at the end. It was almost a 2.5-hour game. But at that same time, starting at 1:30, Alabama took on number 4 Purdue in Canada for a Zach Edey homecoming game. And of course, the question coming in, how would Purdue match up against Alabama's great guards? And the guard play continues to struggle a little bit for Purdue. Alabama led this game 49-47 at half. It was a very high-scoring game. Purdue ended up winning the game 92-86, but the story of the game was actually Alabama, and it made a lot of people skeptical about Purdue. Purdue's point guard, Braden Smith, he had a great game on offense, but overall, the rest of their guards just continued to get outplayed on the offensive end and especially on the defensive end. Mark Sears of Alabama, he's a star player, but he continued to get open shot after open shot, and these guards just can't let that happen, especially as veteran as this team is. Similar to last year, Purdue seems to be relying on Zach Edey too much. Once he matches up against another big 7-footer, I expect that this team to struggle a bit just because of how weak their guard play is. Now, Braden Smith had a great game, don't get me wrong, and him and Fletcher Loyer have improved from last year, but they're still just not elite compared to the alternative. Mark Sears was the best guard on the floor. I just keep thinking, imagine if Purdue were to pick up someone like a Caleb Love in the offseason. This team would be so good. Braden Smith had 27 points. Zach Edey had 35 and 8. They both put up huge numbers, and they beat an unranked Alabama team by only 6 on a neutral site. And this really wasn't a neutral site. It was mainly Purdue fans there, as it was a Zach Edey homecoming game. Alabama looked better than they have before. They have some serious firepower on offense, but they continue to struggle on defense, obviously. They had a couple key players foul out, which is bound to happen against a 7-4 Zach Edey. But Mark Sears was the story of the game for Alabama. He looked like an absolute star. He matched Zach Edey's 35 points with his own 35 points, and he knocked down 8 threes. As I said, just kept getting open. This Purdue defense did not look good against Mark Sears. We'll really get to know how good Purdue is when they play against great guards in a game, and they will definitely be tested against Arizona on Saturday in Indianapolis, which essentially means a home game for the Boilermakers. So that's something to look out for in that game. I expect Arizona to run them out of the gym in this game. Omar Ballo, a huge 7-footer, and they got much better, quicker, just more put-together guard play, Arizona does, than Purdue. Continues to be a struggle for Purdue in the guard play department. We'll see if they can continue to improve. Maybe Braden Smith can become a key leader on their team. But let's move on to the Arizona game, which started at 3:15, where number 23, Wisconsin, visited the number 1 team in the nation in Arizona. We expected this to be a great game throughout, and quite frankly, it was not. Arizona killed them by 25, 98-73. Arizona started the week favored by 6.5, and it moved all the way to 10.5, which kind of showed the bettors were on Arizona's side, and rightfully so. Arizona won by 25. This was their first game this year as the number team in the nation, and they are here to stay. They killed Wisconsin. It was a one-sided affair all game. Arizona is so big and so fast. They play together so well. They are without a doubt the best team in the nation right now. I still had Purdue as my favorite to win the national title, but a lot of those questions were raised against Alabama. You saw some good guard play from Alabama and some not so good guard play from Purdue, even with Braden Smith having that career game. Arizona is definitely better than Purdue right now. I expect them to beat up on them on Saturday. All 5 starters were in double figures for the Wildcats in Arizona. Caleb Love, Omar Ballo, Johnson Boswell, and Pele Larson. And Montages Krivas coming off the bench, he looks really good, adding some height to their team, which doesn't even need more height, but putting in someone off the bench who is 7'2" really helps. There's just no soft spots in this team. They may be the most talented team in the nation. I talk a lot about North Carolina being the most talented team in the nation. I think Arizona can match North Carolina's athleticism. They have beat Duke, Michigan State on a neutral site. They beat Duke at Duke, and Wisconsin now by 25 at home. They are without a doubt the best team in the nation right now. As we noted earlier, they take on Purdue Saturday in Indianapolis, essentially a home game. And then they move to Phoenix, which will essentially be a home game for Arizona as they take on the team Purdue just beat in Alabama. We'll see how they fare against Alabama compared to how Purdue fared against Alabama. And then they take on Florida Atlantic in Las Vegas, a very tough stretch for this Arizona team. Props to them for taking on a very tough schedule. it continues to get harder. We'll see if they can get through those games and continue to be undefeated. Another game that flew kind of under the radar was Arkansas visiting Oklahoma. We talked a lot about this game in the last segment. And Oklahoma was favored by 3.5, which a lot of bettors seem to like Arkansas in this game because of their talent. But it was another one-sided game as the number 19 team in the nation, Oklahoma, beat Arkansas 78-70. And this game was not as close as the score said. Oklahoma had a double-digit lead the entirety of the game. Oklahoma now moves to 9-0 on the year. They look extremely good. They held all 5 Arkansas starters with all their talent to less than 10 points. Javion McCullum added 20 for Oklahoma, as Arkansas now drops to 6-4 on the year, and they need to have a great SEC season to get in that large bid. At least go 500 in that tough conference. At 6-4 right now, I still have them in the tournament, but they're falling, and they need to have a good year to remain at the top of everyone's lists. Let's move on to number 2. Kansas hosted Missouri in a rivalry game. Missouri got off to a hot start in this game, which was shocking for some, and then Kansas just ran them out of the gym at the end of the first half, finishing the half on a 20-2 run. Bill Self had this team together. Kansas is so fast, yet they slow the game down so well. I watched this entire game. They get great spacing. They just look so effortless out there, especially with Hunter Dickinson and KJ Adams playing so well right now. This team looks really good. I'm not sure they have the firepower. Kevin McCullough struggled from the field a little bit, but they still held off a Missouri team 73-64. A good win for this Kansas team in a rivalry game. Kansas State visited LSU, where LSU was favored in this game, even as bad as they have been. And at what point are we going to start giving Jerome Tang some appreciation? Kansas State blew out LSU at LSU 75-60. Jerome Tang so underappreciated. Kansas State does not have the most talented team this year, especially with the news of Naquan Tomlin. He's not on the team anymore, but Jerome Tang is strictly a winner. Kansas State looks good as of now. They were very low on a lot of people's projections this year. They're off to a great start, and LSU continues to struggle for yet another year. A lot of struggles going on down in Louisiana. Now let's move on to the game that surprised me the most. It was at 2 o'clock where Auburn took on Indiana in Georgia. Indiana got off to a 26-20 lead early in the game, and Auburn ended up winning this game 104-76. 104 points, Indiana. You've got to be kidding me. And what if I were to tell you Johnny Broome only had 2 points, and Auburn still scored 104 points on this Indiana team? Just last week, I moved Indiana into my hierarchy of hoops of the top 32 teams in the nation, and I genuinely apologize for doing this. How can I probably gave some people some false hope on this team. This team cannot give up 104 points to this Auburn offense, who really struggled against Appalachian State. If I were to tell you Johnny Broome, he came into this game, he's Auburn's leading scorer by over 8 points per game. He averages over 18 a game, and he only scored 2 in this game, as we noted. How many points would we expect Auburn to score in this game if Johnny Broome only scored 2? Maybe 50, 55? They scored 104 points. 102 points came from people not named Johnny Broome. Horrible performance by Indiana. This game shocked me. Auburn looked good. Great game by Auburn. Indiana, you got some work to do over there with all your talent. Another game that maybe a lot of people did not see coming was at 6 o'clock with the Ohio State Buckeyes visiting Penn State. Ohio State led by 18 early in the second half, and Penn State came all the way back to beat them 83-80. Tough loss for Chris Holtman's team there. Penn State got hot at the end. Penn State, we've seen, have some talent. This moves them back to 500 on the year, but this was a difficult loss for Ohio State. Game of 2 bubble teams was UCLA taking on Villanova in Villanova. Villanova won the game 65-56, and both teams needed a win desperately bad, especially for their March Madness hopes. I watched this entire game, and I mean this in the nicest way possible. This was just a bad basketball game. I don't like either of these two teams. UCLA shot 37% on the game, and Villanova shot 32%. You would think that means there was great defense in this game, but there was not. There were open shots, and neither team just could put the ball in the hoop. It kind of looked like a 7th grade basketball game. I'm not going to lie. Both teams just clanking shots off the rim. Both teams really struggling. Only a total of 4 players from the combined 2 schools scored in double figures. Just from the eye test, quite frankly, I don't see either of these teams making the tournament. Especially UCLA. I do not see UCLA having a good enough team to even make a first 4 team. As of right now, I have Villanova in the first 4, but by the end of the year, I don't know if this team is just strictly good enough to have an NCAA tournament hope. We'll see if Kyle Neptune and Mick Cronin can get their teams on the right pace, but neither team looks very good right now. The late game last night was Gonzaga visiting Washington, where Gonzaga led at half and just got outplayed in the second half, and Washington upset them 78-73. Court storm there, a great environment. Gonzaga's starting to struggle a little bit. I still think they have a very good team. No one really played that bad for Gonzaga, just Washington outplayed them in that home environment. Good win for this Washington team looking to get an at-large bid for the NCAA tournament. A great game that started at 4 o'clock was the battle of some unbeaten teams. Let's get into some of the teams that suffered their first loss of the season. Starting at 4 o'clock was number 24, Clemson, taking on TCU. Both teams unbeaten. One of the teams was not going to leave this game unbeaten, and that team was TCU. Clemson beat them 74-66. Clemson is blazing hot right now. I have them all the way up to a 4 seed in our bracketology as of right now. They seem to have all the pieces. PJ Hall may be the ACC Player of the Year. He scored 17. And Ian Shiflin has been huge for this Clemson Tigers team. He scored 14 and had 9 rebounds. And the Syracuse transfer Joe Girard led the team with 21 points, and he also had 3 3-pointers. Great win there for Clemson. St. Mary's visited Colorado State. Colorado State was one of the hottest teams in the nation just a few weeks ago, but St. Mary's beat them 64-61 to give the number 13 team in the nation their first loss on the year. And this was a much-needed win for St. Mary's, who was ranked 23rd in the preseason AP poll, but dropped to below 500 coming into this game against Colorado State. A big win. Something to look for Colorado State. Is this maybe just the end of their momentum? Were they playing with more momentum than talent? Isaiah Stevens is really good. I don't know if they have the rest of the pieces to be an elite level team. We'll see how they do going forward. I love this Colorado State team. Hopefully they can figure it out and regroup from this loss. Crosstown rivalry game took place with Cincinnati visiting Xavier in the Battle of Cincinnati. Xavier handed Cincinnati their first loss, 84-79. Xavier needed this win bad. They were also sub 500. This moves them to 5-5. As always, a great environment in that game. Good win for the Musketeers. Utah handed number 14 BYU their first loss of the year, 73-69. BYU was number 1 in the recently released net rankings, which kind of shows that doesn't really mean that much. They're ranked high over at KenPom as well. But Utah with a good win there, hopefully trying to make a case for an at-large bid. Let's move into our mid-major madness, another segment on our show where we have one more team who suffered their first loss to a mid-major team. And the team that lost was Nevada, getting drilled by Drake, 72-53. Watch out for Drake, 9-1 on the season, and they've played somewhat of a difficult schedule in terms of mid-major teams. They have wins over Lipscomb, Akron, Missouri State, Oakland, and now Nevada. Pretty solid schedule for a mid-major team. Get to know the name Tucker DeVries. He had 25 in this game, and he averages right around 20-7 on the year. Drake and Indiana State will be a conference in the Missouri Valley as 2 teams to look for. Who will come out of this conference? They'll be battling it out all year. Both teams could even make a case for an at-large bid. Very good conference they got going on down there. Let's move on to our mid-major game of the day, which was Grand Canyon at Liberty. 2 teams I expect to see in the NCAA tournament as anywhere in between 11 to 13 seeds. Liberty was actually favored in this game at home by 4.5, but Grand Canyon took it home 69-64. Grand Canyon stays blazing hot, visiting Liberty and beating a great team after beating San Diego State at home. As of right now, I have Grand Canyon as a 12 seed in the tournament, and I expect them to be a 5 seed. I love watching this team. They were down early in this game, 23-8, and came back to win in a tough environment. And this is a long trip for Grand Canyon all the way across the country. They are the heavy favorite to win the WAC. Their only competition is Tarleton State. If I had to pick a Cinderella team it would be Grand Canyon as of right now. They look good. Hopefully they can keep it going. Another game of two teams projected to win their conference was Colgate visiting Vermont. Vermont was favored by 3, but Colgate won the game 77-71. Colgate is the only team in their conference with a winning percentage above 500. This is in the Patriot League. We know how dangerous Colgate can become in March every year. They seem to put it together. Vermont is still favored heavily to win the American East, even though they have dropped 3 of their last 7, even with that miraculous win against Yale. I have Vermont as a 13 seed right now and Colgate as a 15 seed. We'll see how they continue to go moving forward. Finally, our last mid-major game that's worth mentioning is Norfolk State visited Illinois State. And Norfolk State was underdogs by 7.5 points, yet won the game by 6, 64-58. Norfolk State is hot right now, and they continue to make a good case for a decent seed if they were to win their conference tournament. They are the main favorite to win the MEAC. Now, a question came up from one of our fans who said, who is our favorite mid-major Cinderella story team this year? As we noted, our number 1 team right now would be Grand Canyon. This team just seems to have that energy and that vibe that can lead them on a Cinderella run. They look great. They have all the pieces. They're very athletic. And number 2, another team we also talked about is Drake. They have a great basketball program in general over there. They can always shoot the 3, one of the top teams in the nation in 3-point percentage every single year. I love Drake right now as of 9-1. They would be my second choice as a Cinderella team. Number 3, you can't not mention Princeton. Princeton is obviously on everyone's list as of now. They have a lot of pressure on them right now. We talked about their big 3. They have a good game against St. Joe's coming up later today. They'll be challenged in the Ivy League with Yale, Harvard, and Cornell. I definitely do not expect them to go undefeated. They're undefeated right now. It's a little too early to tell how good this team is. We'll see how they compete with a talented Harvard and Yale team. I do love Princeton. They're my number 3 Cinderella story team as of now. Number 4, I still have Liberty. This was my number 1 team earlier in the year. They looked great. They've started to slow down a bit. They got beat by 25 by Florida Atlantic, which scares me a little bit. I still like Liberty. I think they got a lot of athleticism and a great coach going over there. I still like Liberty at my 4 spot. And finally, number 5, I do have Norfolk State. They've lost 3 games this year. They beat VCU at VCU. They've got a nice team. They're blazing hot right now. Norfolk State, just kind of a gut feeling. I like this team. They always seem to put it together come March. Now let's lead this into our hierarchy of hoops for the week. Our top 32 teams in the nation. Starting number 1, Arizona. They are the best team in the nation by far. Our ranking seems to be kind of close to the AP poll ranking once again. Which you might like, you might not like. Oh well. Number 2, we have Kansas after their win against Missouri. 3, Houston. 4, UConn. And we moved Purdue all the way from 2 to 5 after that game against Alabama, just raising a lot of concerns with their guard play. The rest of the list is staying very consistent for us. We dropped Arkansas, Indiana, and Missouri out of our rankings and moved in Alabama, Drake, and Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon to 30, Drake 31, Alabama 32. We dropped BYU all the way to 25 and moved Duke up to 21 after their dominating win last night. Very similar to our week before. For the rest of that list, we will be posting that on our Facebook and Twitter. Be sure to check those out. And we did update our best bets for the national champion. As of right now, our best bet for the national champion, it was Purdue. We moved them all the way to 6. Number 1, it has to be Arizona right now. They're plus 1,000. They're still not the favorite. It is amazing to me that this team is not the favorite. Purdue's at plus 950, Arizona plus 1,000. They're our best bet as of right now. At number 2, we have Creighton at plus 2,000. This team continues to impress. I think that loss against Colorado State, I continue to say it was a fluke. I still love this Creighton team. You can get them at plus 2,000 on FanDuel. Number 3, we have Houston at plus 1,500. They're number 1 at KenPom. They're the best defensive team in the nation. I like what they got going on over there. LJ Cryer is a star. Get them at plus 1,500. At 4, we have the team where LJ Cryer transferred from, Baylor, at plus 2,000. Their offense is great. Their offense is number 1 at KenPom. They have a great team going on over there. They just blew out Seton Hall. Get them at plus 2,000. At 5, I moved Miami all the way up at plus 5,000. The more I look at these odds, That is way too good of odds to not take Miami. They made the Elite Eight 2 consecutive years, one being the Final Four last year. Plus 5,000. They have a lot of veteran talent there. I would take them to win the national championship with these odds. At number 6, as we noted, we move Purdue all the way down at plus 950. They still have a shot. Zach Edey is by far the best player in college basketball. I still question their guard play. I can see them winning it all on a revenge tour, but I have them at number 6 right now. At number 7 and number 8 are two plus 4,000 teams, with North Carolina coming in at 7 and Florida Atlantic at 8. All their talent, all their veteran leadership. I can see both of these teams with the right road making a run. At number 9, we have Gonzaga. After their loss against Washington, we dropped them a little bit. They're plus 2,800 right now on FanDuel. I still think they have all the pieces. They got a great coach. Mark Few may be the best coach in college basketball. I still like what Gonzaga has going on over there. Very deep team. We'll see how they do going forward. And we added one team who I quite frankly do not see winning the national championship, but I still had to include them because I do have them as a Final Four team. I just don't think they have enough firepower to win the national championship. It is UConn at number 10 at plus 1,300. Dan Hurley has a great thing going on over there, obviously. Some people are saying that this team is better than last year's UConn, and that is not true. That UConn team last year was so good. This team is also good. They just don't have that star power that they had last year. If I had to pick a Final Four right now, give me Arizona, give me UConn. I'm taking UConn to the Final Four. I don't think they can beat these teams that have more talent than them, such as Arizona or even a Creighton. My third team is Creighton in the Final Four. I think they have all the pieces for it. And then the fourth one is up for debate. We will see how it goes come March. One of the hot teams coming in, maybe as a 7 or 8 seed, always seems to sneak in. There's always one team that is higher than a 5 seed that makes it into the tournament and into the Final Four. We'll see how that goes. Moving on to the upcoming week of college basketball, it's a pretty slow week ahead until we hit the weekend. A huge slate on Saturday, which we will have another pod to discuss those games. Later today, Sunday, December 10th, there are 2 games worth noting. It is Colorado and number 15, our number 11 team, Miami. Miami favored by 1.5. This game takes place in Brooklyn. You can check that out on ESPN2. ESPN2 has a doubleheader, and that 4 o'clock game is Memphis at number 21, Texas A&M. Texas A&M favored by 7.5. 4 teams looking to make an at-large bid. We have Miami, Texas A&M, and Memphis comfortably in the tournament, and Colorado as a first 4 out. And then we continue on to the pretty rough week. Notable game on Friday, which is almost a week away, UConn and Gonzaga in the Continental Tire Classic at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. That'll be a good game. That's quite frankly the only good game throughout the weekdays. We'll be back Saturday morning to preview the exciting games coming that day, along with much more around the college basketball world. We are going to come on with another pod coming this week with our updated bracketology after these huge games this week. Be sure to be looking out on Twitter and Facebook for updated odds, updated bets, updated everything college basketball world. Our Twitter is at Bracket Science with 2 S's, and our Facebook is at Bracket Science, 2 words. We'll post our bracketology on there. We'll post just about every game that is even worth noting, every result. Stay tuned for our pod coming later this week, which we're expecting to release on Wednesday, our bracketology. Thanks again to everyone for tuning in. Hope everyone has a great rest of their week, a slow week of college basketball. Be sure to join us for our next podcast, posted on Twitter and Facebook. Everyone have a great rest of their Sunday.